Well, you hear that sound and you know what time it is. This is the sound of an uncertain future. Welcome to the Risktopic Podcast. I am your host, Martin Rooke, and this is the show that stands at the crossroads of science, technology, health, and society. How are we doing, ladies and gentlemen? You good? I'm good. And I apologise for there not being a show last week. I went back to Essex and I didn't take my microphone because my bag was full and I got a big microphone. Got the biggest microphone. It's huge. It's huge, mate. So I popped back to Essex. I didn't have my mic and I thought, do you know what? I'm not going to subject you guys to a podcast that was recorded using the internal microphone on a laptop. That is just absolutely terrible. So I thought I'd save it. Plus, anyway, if I had recorded the podcast last week, I probably would have just spent ages talking about the new Alien movie, which is absolutely amazing. There's very few films that actually try and get fear right. And this very much did. You know, there's such an undertone of dread that rises up throughout the film. And then you get these sudden explosions of fear being acted out on screen. They are absolutely amazing. So what have I got for you this week? I've got a good show. I like this show. And, you know, speaking of fear and speaking of dread and stuff like that, there is probably nothing that is more terrifying to a parent than the thought of them getting sick, getting hurt, and something along those lines. And obviously, when it comes to illnesses, we have been blessed in the West with having an awful load of medical breakthroughs in the realm of vaccinations. You know, the diseases that afflicted those who are probably in their 60s now, you know, measles, mumps, rubella, even older diseases like, you know, smallpox, cowpox, almost completely eradicated off the face of the earth. I mean, it's eradicated pretty much in the West. And for the rest of the world, you know, they are taking steps and measures to fully eradicate these diseases. However, one of the hallmarks of living in, I guess you could say, a postmodern society is that people have become relatively distrusting of authority, distrusting of scientists who are very often seen to be arms of authority. Medicine, politics, very, very closely intertwined. Even it comes down to the fact that people really don't trust even corporations, corporate biotech companies, to be able to produce good products. If you look at particular bits of research that look at people's trust in science and scientists, people are way more likely to trust academic institutions, university scientists and their research than they are to trust corporate scientists and their research. And all of this really culminated in the big MMR autism link scare that took place, where was it, late 90s, early 2000s? And that really did shake an awful load of people up. It made them start to question vaccines because, and this is the thing with technology, and it was one of those things that people have seen again and again and again. We thought it was good. We found out that actually, no, there is something to worry about. Now, this wasn't the case with the MMR autism link. You know, that was made up pretty much on falsified data, but it embedded that seed of doubt, that little strand of dread into the head of parents, in that we don't fully know what we're sticking into our kids. Now, me, personally, I'm all for vaccines. Go for it. But I can understand it if a parent was to sit there and say, look, I'm a layman. I am not a scientist. I work in a bar. I work in an office. I work as a waitress. You know, I've got my kid and I am trusting the authorities to tell me that what they're putting in my kid has absolutely zero risk. And when you look back over the history of, I guess you could say, blending the family with healthcare, it hasn't been wholly trustworthy. Look at thalidomide, for example. That was a drug that came out. People said, yeah, this is going to be great to help morning sickness. Nah, led to deformed children. More recently, you know, we've got the contraceptive pill. People said, this is going to be great. It's going to fully liberate women's sexuality. Yeah. And now we're also starting to look at the mental health effects that the combined pill seems to be having, you know, really bad mood swings, high rates of depression, stuff like that. So again, you are having a person, you know, not just a woman, could be a parent, you know, both of them, both parents together making a decision, but they're sitting there saying, there's this thing that we're putting in our kids that could potentially lead to something that might not be life-threatening, but would severely impact their quality of life, something like autism or other deformities, a la thalidomide. Now, of course, there is the counter argument there that, well, if your kid does catch these diseases, does catch measles, smallpox, the Black Plague, whatever, it is going to leave them absolutely devastated. It is going to ruin their lives a whole lot more than this potential risk of maybe possibly developing autism or something along those lines. And maybe they are correct. Maybe people have been led down this route of sort of false security in relying upon what we know as herd immunization, which is where, a vast number of the population are immunized to a particular illness, which prevents that illness from spreading to other people. So let's just take, for example, a school of roughly about 1,000 pupils. That's a good, nice round measurement. And let's say 950 of them are immunized against measles. So that means there's only going to be 50 kids who could possibly spread measles from one to another. And they may very well be spread across all the years and in all different classrooms and in different sets for English, maths, science, whatever. So the chances of them coming into contact with, if there was one with a carrier, the chances of that carrier coming into contact with someone who they could spread the disease to is really quite small. But again, what this speaks down to is the voluntariness element of accepting risk. And it may be that in the minds of parents, their child contracting something like measles is a much more acceptable risk because it's seen as being wholly more naturally occurring, if that makes sense. Sort of down to a natural law of probability. The same as walking out and getting hit by a car. It just happens. It is what it is. However, providing your consent for a doctor to inject something into your child, something that you have very, very little idea what it is. And if that particular substance was to have an adverse reaction with your child and they were to be left maimed for life, that comes down to your decision to put your child in that particular situation. And I couldn't even fathom the guilt, the self-persecution that a parent who thought they were doing good by their child and ended up putting them in severe harm, what they'd be feeling. So when it comes down to understanding why some parents might not want to vaccinate their children, yeah, I can fully get it, even if I don't have kids myself. But now what we're seeing, given a globalized world and also given this lack in trust of vaccinations over the past few years, is that we've started to see the resurgence of particular childhood illnesses like measles, like tuberculosis and things like that. Things that in the West we thought we'd gotten rid of. And of course, this is leading public health officials to start to worry. Their job is to keep people safe and healthy. And of course, they decided that the best thing to do is to make vaccinations compulsory and to try and fine people. Headline from the BBC News: Italy makes 12 vaccinations compulsory for children, and Germany vaccinations fines plan as measles cases rise. Now, these are just a couple of proposals put in by particular European governments aimed at addressing the following illnesses: polio, diphtheria, tetanus, hepatitis B, hemolyphus influenzae B, meningitis C, measles, mumps, rubella, whooping cough, and chickenpox. And when I sit there and commend the public health officials of Germany and Italy for trying to be proactive in addressing this issue, they are being relatively authoritarian about it. It was suggested that in Germany, the punishment for not vaccinating your child would be about €2,500, which is roughly about £2,200. Now, the reason they state that these particular steps are necessary is to combat the false information put out by anti-vaxxers, in that, there is a link from vaccinations to autism and things like that. So let me get this straight. If you have a population of parents who are not trusting the government, who are not trusting officials, who are not trusting experts, the best thing you think you can do, right, is force them, using the power of the state, to vaccinate their children. See, this is what I love about scientific communications, right? People sit there and think, if you just tell people the facts, they'll immediately get it. No, that's not true. You have to reframe the facts in a way that allows people to understand it. So if you sit there and say, well, vaccines work, just vaccinate your children, you're not listening to the concerns of parents. And the concerns is, we can't trust you. We can't trust the elites. We can't trust the scientists. Hell, we can't even trust the bankers to look after our money. What makes you think we're going to trust scientists to put something in my child? Because right now, that distrust of vaccinations is far more resonant with people than just simply believing the experts. So what should be done, as opposed to forcing poor struggling families to do something completely against their wishes or face a fine? Well, a media blitzkrieg. And I think this is one of the biggest tragedies about not producing a load of TV culture ourselves, or rather, the most entertaining TV culture coming from America, in that you can't put in the public health messages that you want to into your country's own media. I think for the UK, our country's media is what? EastEnders. I don't watch that. Do we have a strong media presence that would allow some arm of the public health authority in England to sort of sit there and say, okay, look, we have X hundred thousands of pounds. We want to address the issue of vaccinations. We feel that there is so much misinformation being pumped about vaccinations that we are willing to put on a BBC documentary drama about vaccinations. Why not do it about Jenner? That'd be fantastic. The guy who essentially cured smallpox by testing it on himself. Why not put out a call to papers for comic book artists, comic book writers to create stories regarding public health concerns and epidemiology in the UK. Jon Snow, for example, not that Jon Snow, the Jon Snow who actually knew stuff, taking the handle off the pump in London to look at the outbreak of cholera. Great story. We just don't hear anything about it. It always seems to be that, we come from a tradition where we trust the government and we trust authorities, or at least that's what those in power seem to believe. And what we seem to be doing on the streets is actually separating ourselves away from that trust. And those in power have not realized it yet, and they do not know how to manage it. And again, there are those people who are celebrating these things, as if to sit there and go, ha, take that, you anti-science people, you enemies of today, the person who I have decided to demonize through no other reason other than the fact that you don't perceive the world exactly how I do. And don't get me wrong, I've seen many tweets, many Facebook posts supporting these things, supporting forcing the citizenry to do something that they may have been misinformed on, but they just don't want to do. Those people who get angry at anti-vaxxers and who demonize and castigate them as being anti-science, please stop. You are making it so much worse. You are becoming a foil for these people to argue against. You're becoming something that can be constructed as the bad guy for them, the same way that you're constructing them as the bad guy for you. Rather than working towards creating something positive, creating that dialogue, creating cultural products where people can sit there and go, okay, maybe I was a little bit misinformed about vaccinations. Rather than creating products to sit there and go, if you don't vaccinate your child, you are a bad parent. Without that positive scientific message, and those who are proponents for vaccinations, those who are proponents and on the side of science, taking blows on the chin, all you're going to do is validate anti-vaxxers even more. Not only that, you are going to give people who want to make money from being anti-vaxxer personalities, you are going to give them the ability to do so. It is so easy, so easy to make money from your opinion on the internet. Might not be a lot of money, might not be a living, but you can make money from it. And all you have to do is sit there and go, trust me, I know what's best. I'm not a scientist. I am a parent. I am someone who cares. Listen to my logic and compare that against the people who are sitting there telling you that you're a bad person for not vaccinating your child. They're the evil ones. They want to put this horrible, nasty stuff in your kids. I want to give you a nice, normal, natural, organic life. And at the same time, you get countries like Italy making vaccinations mandatory. You're getting countries like Germany who are considering fines. all that's doing is adding ammo to these personalities to sit there and say, look what the government wants to do. They want to take your kids. They want to put this in your kids. What else does it do? Does it make them more docile? Does it make them more likely to listen to authority? To not be the free thinkers that we value so much in society? Are these vaccinations actually something else? Is it lowering the testosterone of our men, making them more submissive? Is it raising the testosterone of our women, making them not want to have children? See, my friends, listen to me, because I am the voice of reason and logic. I am not a scientist. I won't tell you how to live your life in accordance to this corporate government agenda. No. Listen to me, because I am truth. And like I said, going back to the beginning of this segment, I can't blame people for believing that, for believing the soft-spoken, charismatic voice that pertains to be some sort of truth teller in an age of uncertainty, when we have lost confidence in our institutions, both religious institutions, governmental institutions, even, scientific and corporate institutions. It almost seems to be that modern society has become hyper-individualized to the point that we go, we need something, we need a life raft. And we don't have those scientists on screen. We don't have those personalities based in science on TV, on YouTube shows, anything like that to sit there and say, it's okay, don't panic. I mean, the whole point of Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy, don't panic. That message has been lost. And instead, people seem to be more willing and more ready to listen to those voices that are happy to sit there and say, panic and listen to me, because I know the truth and my truth will set you free. Anyway, speaking about truth, next segment, we are going to be talking about Donald Trump and this Paris climate change accord thing that he decided to drop out of. Will this be the end of the world? Well, if we survived the Aztec end of the world, this won't be the end of the world either. See you in a minute.